I'm at Taylor Guitars, but most of my career was in environmental policy and advocacy circles. And I remember in the early mid 2000s that Barenaked Ladies was one of the first bands that I had ever heard that was really starting to look at the environmental impacts of touring. And can you tell me a little bit about like what turned you on to that and what some of the early things you did in terms of trying to lessen your footprint?
Well, we kind of come from roots of environmentalism. You know, I started the Energy Conservation Club, like in the 6th grade at my school, that we were just trying to get all the kids and teachers to turn off the lights when they left a classroom instead of lights being on all day, every day. Jim Cregan's mom was instrumental in starting recycling programs in the late 70s, early 80s in Scarborough, where we're from. And I think we just wanted to bring part of that ethic into our work life, which was creating an atrocious footprint as we traveled around. And you know, we partnered with Reverb in the early 2000s, realizing that a lot of these venues we were at didn't have any kind of recycling. So we were asking fan volunteers, we were offering tickets for fans who would come help us collect the recycling and then take it to a local recycling in their own vehicles after the show. So it started pretty hand to mouth and has grown into, you know, a real kind of movement in the touring industry that we're super proud to have kind of spearheaded that.
No, as you should. I can remember Barenaked Ladies and I think it was like Dave Matthews Band and Guster. Space Maroon 5, I think, were some of the early bands that were
and they
in
were
that space.
Friends of friends.
Oh, yeah.
And it all kind of came through Adam from Guster, Guster opened about 100,000 shows for Barenaked Ladies. And so partnering with Reverb just made sense.
It's kind of a Vermont thing going on there.
Yes, indeed.
What changes have you seen? I mean, I got to imagine in the beginning, it was kind of an alien concept to be hoisting upon venues.
It was, and we met with a lot of resistance at first.
Yeah. But
it was also partly, you know, we're in a new venue every day, and the last thing you want to do is walk up to a pile of plastic forks and spoons and disposable dishes. Like, if you're gonna eat crappy vegetarian lasagna and baked chicken cutlets, you at least want to have real cutlery to do it with.
Or at least bamboo or something.
Yeah.
Give me something.
Yeah, we were met with a lot of resistance at early on, because it is easier to use disposable stuff, and sometimes the venue facilities aren't conducive to having dishware and cutlery, etc. But we just had to keep pushing, and it, you know, aside from a sustainability angle, it's also just nicer for a band to eat off plates using real cutlery. Like, this is where we live. It's not one day for us. It's all summer.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Barenaked Ladies, and the rest of you for pushing it, because it seems like you go to a venue these days, and, you know, they vary from venue to venue, but it seems like there's a little bit more consciousness about recycling. And I don't see, my European friends still come over here and are horrified at how often they see, you know, a styrofoam to go, or a plastic this or plastic that. Canada's always been a little bit ahead of the US, and Europe always seems to be a little ahead of both of us.
Yeah.
But we've come a long way.
Absolutely. Baby steps.
What do you think, what do you think's going on, like, right now, in terms of, like, what are the issues that you see that you wish you could kind of tweak a little bit?
Well, I think it's about thoughtfulness, generally speaking. And I don't mean being kind to people. I mean being present and being thoughtful about the things you're doing and the impact you're having. I think a lot of environmentalism is just about making people aware of the impact they're having. So sometimes just a little knowledge can go a long way. And just educating people to the small changes they can make that can have a big difference. You get a lot of pushback of people saying, "Oh, great, so I got to use a paper straw now, but industry can blah 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 blah." And of course, like everything, it's like we all need to move the needle. We all need to make changes, make thoughtful decisions that slowly move the needle. And we can do it personally. We can pressure government, we can pressure industry, and all of those things have an impact. Doing nothing is not an option. We have this one ball that we all live on, and we can all have an impact.
If I dare say, I think one of the secrets of your longevity as a band is the community that you've built around the band. You have a very faithful and loyal fan base. How do you feel about, like, I don't know, the thin line between preaching, you're given a bully pulpit, you're a rock star, people pay money to come to see you. How comfortable are you? Where do you draw the line in terms of, you said the key word, education. When I worked at Greenpeace, I used to hate it when they were like, well, what's one thing you can tell your supporters to do? And it's become educated, think. How is that for you in terms of your interaction with your fan base? And like, do you kind of draw the line anywhere, or do you just let it go from the hip?
I say whatever I'm thinking. And if people push back against that, I find it deeply strange. Like, people want to know what celebrities eat, what they wear, what they put in their hair, where they go, where they vacation. But all of a sudden, when there's any mention of politics or environmentalism, oh, shut up, we don't want to hear about that. Don't preach to me. It's like, give it a rest. My job, literally my job, is to express what I think. That's my only job. I write songs, I think about things fairly deeply, and when I get the opportunity to talk, I do, and it's considered. And, I think fans of the band know that we've had songs that are broadly ranging for the entire ridiculously long career of this band. I've received some pushback, and that's why I got the hell off of social media.
Yeah, good for you. You should do that anyway.
Yeah.
Although this is probably going to be on social media, so there's nothing wrong with social media.
That's okay. I will not be in the comments. That's the secret, folks. Stay out of the comments.
It's funny because, I spent most of my career was at Greenpeace, and I used literally everything from toilet paper to 2x4s to plywood to soybeans as kind of props to get people to think about, milk doesn't come from the supermarket, wood doesn't come from Home Depot, it comes from, your choices have impacts. And then I end up at a guitar company. Everybody, it's like the sword Excalibur. And as a performer, you're given this incredibly unique opportunity to educate and talk. So I guess I'm glad you just call it as it is, and people are going to like it or they don't like it, but there's a magic to working for a guitar company or being a singer-songwriter, a musician. It just gives you a real opportunity to make people think about some things that maybe they wouldn't otherwise think about.
Well, and there was a real symmetry between the band and Taylor Guitars. A guitar company that relies on wood, and particularly rare tone woods, that wanted to take a stance in the preservation of those tone woods. I was very blown away by how forward-thinking Taylor was.
I appreciate you saying that.
Well, it was a real alignment with where we were at, and to notice the pushback elsewhere in the industry was frankly a little alarming. So it felt like, another great association.
It's, as a lifelong environmental policy advocacy guy, to end up at Taylor Guitars, a lot of this is driven by Bob Taylor. I mean, it's him, it's his personality. I serve at his pleasure. And almost all the environmental initiatives we've got going were the brainchild of Bob, and he sends me off on my task. But it's interesting because you've got Bob, who's 45 years into his career, and he's seen the history of buying wood for guitars. And now we have Andy Powers, this savant builder who's going to be leading the company into the next 40 years. So for me, it's this weird place to hear these two guys talking about what buying wood for musical instruments was like. Bob likes to say he feels like he's crossed the threshold from how it's always been to how it has to be.
Yeah.
And then you hear Andy talking about like urban woods and changes in design and build to prepare for a changing wood supply and a changing planet.
Well, and Taylor is a relatively new company when you look at the other big guitar manufacturers, right? But it's so nice that Bob and Andy are looking at it as a century game.
Yeah, right? Indeed.
Because they want to be around and building guitars for people 100 years from now. And what is it going to take to be that company a century from now? And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take planning, forward thinking, really diligent choices about conservation and sustainability. Like, that's the only way you get amazing tone woods, is by being thoughtful about it.
The quality of guitars is only going to improve.
Yeah.
But if you're not watching what's going on out in the world, you're going to have a cold wake up one day when you realize you can't get what you always got because it ain't there anymore.
Yeah.
Are there any issues like environmental, social, that just that you kind of into and have a deeper affection for or concern?
Yeah, well, Reverb has been almost a 20-year relationship for us. And, that's about trying to minimize our footprint as a touring organization, and it's about trying to bring the rock and roll industry to be more thoughtful about sustainability. But for me personally, like, I am a hiker, scuba diver,
pilot.
I love the outdoors. I love being out in nature. Diving, I see it.
Yeah.
The catastrophic effects of temperature change killing reefs, and I go back to places 5 years later, and the difference is staggering and upsetting. So, I think it's important that we look at community as a much larger word than people tend to think about it. Your community isn't just your neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's your continent. It's your planet. And as I said, like, we all share it. We need to be mindful about the footprint we're leaving, and to make sure that future generations can enjoy this beautiful ball spinning around a gas giant hurtling through space.
Good.